Why does being ignored hurt more than being rejected? Think about it. If someone tells you they don't want you in their life, it hurts, but at least you have an answer. When someone ignores you, there is no answer, no explanation, no closure, just silence. And somehow that silence becomes louder than any words they could have said. The truth is, being ignored doesn't just hurt your feelings, it triggers something much deeper inside the human mind. And once you understand why, you'll never look at silence the same way again. Imagine meeting someone new. At first, everything feels effortless. The conversations flow naturally. Messages arrive quickly. You feel seen, valued, and important. Then one day something changes. The replies become slower. The enthusiasm fades. The person who once seemed interested suddenly becomes distant. You tell yourself they're probably busy. A few hours turn into a day. A day turns into several days. Now you're checking your phone more often than usual, rereading old conversations, looking for clues, trying to figure out what happened. The strange thing is that the less they communicate, the more you think about them. Why? Because the human brain hates unanswered questions. Most people think being ignored hurts because it damages self-esteem, but that's only part of the story. Human beings are wired for connection. For thousands of years, belonging to a group increased the chances of survival. Being excluded meant danger. Even though the world has changed, parts of your brain still react as if social rejection is a threat. That's why being ignored can feel surprisingly painful. Your brain treats social disconnection as something important, something that needs immediate attention. Here's what makes being ignored so powerful. Rejection is painful, but it's clear. Ignoring someone creates uncertainty, and uncertainty keeps the mind searching for answers. You begin asking questions. Did I say something wrong? Are they upset? Have they lost interest? Should I message again? The brain becomes obsessed with finding a conclusion, not because the person is necessarily special, but because the situation is unfinished. An unanswered question often occupies more mental space than an answered one. Why people start chasing. When people feel ignored, they often make the same mistake. They chase, they send another message, then another, then another. They believe that if they just say the right thing, they'll get the response they're hoping for. But attention that has to be forced is rarely genuine. The more you chase, the more your happiness becomes dependent on someone else's response. And that's a dangerous place to be. Most people see silence as a mystery, but silence is often information. It tells you where someone's priorities are. It tells you how they communicate. It tells you how much effort they are willing to invest. Sometimes people are genuinely busy. Sometimes they are overwhelmed. But when a pattern of inconsistency appears, silence starts revealing something important. Not what you're worth, but what they are willing or able to offer. One of the biggest mistakes people make is assuming that being ignored means they aren't good enough. But another person's behavior is not always a reflection of your value. Sometimes people lack emotional maturity. Sometimes they avoid difficult conversations. Sometimes they simply don't know how to communicate honestly. Their silence may say more about them than it does about you. The moment you stop chasing, something interesting happens. Your focus begins to return. You stop waiting for notifications. You stop analyzing every interaction. You stop making someone else responsible for your peace of mind. And slowly, you remember that your value was never dependent on their attention. The strongest position you can be in is not convincing someone to respond. It's knowing you'll be okay whether they do or not. If someone is ignoring you right now, remember this. Silence can be painful, but it can also be revealing. It shows you where you stand. It shows you what kind of connection you're dealing with. And sometimes the closure you've been waiting for is already there, not in what they said, but in what they chose not to say, because the people who truly value you rarely leave you questioning whether they care, and the moment you stop chasing attention is often the moment you start finding peace. The greatest power isn't getting a response, it's reaching a point where you no longer need one.